Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Hammered Daily Show. Wednesday is our standard innovation day, so it's Wednesday Innovations, and we have with us Mr. Ed Mead, who is CEO, COO, CFAHEO of Viewber. Now, those of you who don't know Viewber, we're going to let Ed introduce himself in a second, but it really has changed the landscape for auctions. It will enable you, if you're in London and you regularly buy in Manchester or Birmingham and you can't be asked to drive all the way up, up that M4 toll or the M6 or wherever it is that you're going, you just go onto Ed's system, you book an appointment, someone goes there, takes videos, they'll walk around it live with you on WhatsApp or whatever it is, but we're going to let Ed do the actual salesmanship of Viewber. But if we can ask you, Ed, just to go through a little bit of your history, because you were talking just before we went live, and you've been in this game for 40-ish years, so that's remarkable.
Yeah, thanks for that. I would suggest that I started in this industry in 1979, which is probably before most people watching this were born. And yeah, I've been in an estate agency all that time, and I've always been in an estate agency in central London, which has been a fascinating area. And 1979 happened to be the year that the Shah of Iran was booted out, and a lot of Iranians started coming into London. And I seem to have spent the last 40 years dealing with different waves of various well-heeled overseas buyers coming into London. And it's been a fascinating time to be around. It was a fascinating time to be around as an agent. You think about the Iranians, you think about various other people coming in. You got the euro in 1999, people investing in London. And I think it's probably gone a little bit too far, actually, in terms of central London. You drive around central London these days, there aren't many lights on. It's rather sad, really. People have moved out to live in the areas around the centre of London. And the government seems to think that central London is a great big piggy bank. They can squeeze as much as they like, which is a bit dull. But I ended up running was one of a team of 4 people running a big agency in London called Douglas & Gordon, where I worked for 25 years. Great business, big on property management. But the one thing we always struggled with as time went on was the fact that estate agency is run today in exactly the same way as it was run 200 years ago. Buyers are really, or certainly back in the 70s and 80s and even 90s, were really a hostage to when estate agents were open, when they wanted to go and show properties. And that has been changing over the last few years. It's very much changed on the letting side. Lettings tends to be a much faster moving business. It's much more tech enabled. People tend to be younger. They're used to communicating in a different way. The selling market is a bit different. Buyers tend to be a little bit older, and they hung on to their methods of communication, the telephone and email, and doing what the agents told them to do. But the new generation won't do that. And at Douglas & Gordon, what started to happen was that each of our 18 offices had a weekend viewing person, and weekends were only Saturdays. And their diary was full by Tuesday, and there was an enormous amount of business we were missing at weekends, people who wanted to see properties at weekends. And the trouble these days is if people can't see a property when they want to, their inbox fills up from Rightmove, on the market, Zoopla, whatever, with new stuff on the Monday morning. And if they can't see the one they wanted to see, they're just going to move on to the new things. So it's important to grab those people. And we were missing those people. And because we had good staff, those staff didn't want to spend their time roaring up and down the M4, or in our case, roaring around London at weekends to show things. They wanted their own lives. They wanted to be able to do what they wanted to do. So it was a real conundrum. So my wife's also in the industry, works for a very well-known agency, and heads up their PR. And we're lucky enough to have a very nice place in Dorset. It was a nice May bank holiday, I think, about 6 years ago. We were wandering out a field, and we were, like a lot of people, I'm sure, on their own walks. They're trying to think of the next big idea that's going to create enough money for them to retire. My wife said, well, surely there's something, isn't there, that is in the business at Douglas & Gordon that you have a problem with? And I said, well, it would be really nice to have someone that we could dip into and borrow to do viewings when people can't, when our staff can't do it. And she said, that's a really good idea. We should do something about that. So I sat on it, took it to a few people. They wanted to see it running. I couldn't do that because I was running a business, et cetera, et cetera. And then I bumped into my current business partner, great guy called Marcus DeFerenti. Marcus and I decided we were going to give it a go. trialed it, and I left Douglas and Gordon to do it full time in September 2016. And to be honest, back then, guys, we thought it was going to be something that estate agents would jump into, and estate agents would think, this is great. But actually, the resistance with estate agency was against the status quo. It was the fact that the system had been the same for so long, and agents didn't want to change that. So even though we tried to persuade them that this was a good idea, they could use us, there were all sorts of brand loyalties. Our brand wasn't known. They were worried about handing over their brand image to someone doing a viewing. They still, for some of the big corporate agents, they still sell a lot of services to buyers. So that's 40% or 30% of their income. So they wanted to make sure they were still meeting face to face. But there was a lot of surprised faces saying, well, hang on a minute, isn't that what estate agents do? Now, that is now changing. It's taken 3 or 4 years for that to change, and it is now becoming much more commonplace. The high street is using Viewber more and more and more to fill in gaps. Clearly, some of the online agents, the bigger ones, have taken to it like a duck to water. But what really changed it for us was when we came across, particularly you guys at Auction House, on the auction sector, suddenly thought, well, hang on a minute, you know, exactly as Jay characterized at the beginning of this conversation, you know, we're spending a lot of time, you know, we're based in London, we're taking on stuff in Hull, Manchester, Leeds, whatever it is. And it's a bloody nightmare to organize the viewing runs to get these things shown. And it was very quickly obvious to us, or was very obvious to some of our auction people we were talking to, that this was something that could really change the game for them. And that's what's happened. We now do business with over 70% actually of all the UK auction houses. So it's gone from 0 to 60 from that perspective very quickly. We do stuff with property managers, as I said, online agents, housing associations, build to rent operators, the high street. There are lots of other sectors we're in, but the auction sector, it seemed to be a pretty, I hate to use the expression, but it was a bit of a no-brainer.
How did you guys come up with the name Viewber? Was that to do with it's like as Uber for viewings, or is it, because it does sound like this is how I describe it to a lot of people, and they ask me what's Viewber, like, well, it's like Uber for viewings and agents basically. You just pick your time, you book it, and then they're there.
It was actually one of my business partner's kids that came up with it, and it was such a good, it just described what we do, and it's a completely different arena from what the other company you mentioned are involved in. So it's of no particular relevance, that, I don't think. And that wasn't the reason it was picked. It was picked because it said exactly what we do. So
it's very good. I find it fascinating that obviously like we sell a lot of properties through auctions, like independent auction consultancy, and we put properties in auctions like this. Today we're selling property in Oldham, property in Newham Way in East London, another one in Southend, and then next week something in Faversham. And it's like all those properties, if we had to do all those viewings ourselves, it would be a nightmare to basically go to and organize and basically make sure that all those viewings happen on time and everything aligns. But
well, of course, the services have developed as well, Piotr. From that perspective, not only can we send people along now to go and actually do the viewings, but of course we send people along to take pictures for the catalogues.
Yes,
so actually one can do everything. And these days, if you want to put a property on a portal, on Rightmove, Zoopla, on the market, they have to be verified. So someone has to have gone to look at them to say, yes, that actually exists. So we do that as well. So there's any number of simple things that one can do that now having a local person. I mean, the thing with Viewber is we've built up a network. We have over 3,000 active. We've had 7,000 since we started. We have 3,000 active, vetted, trained people. We have an online academy at Viewber, so the guys all our Viewbers can train themselves to new skills. They can learn to do floor plans, how to take better photographs. We can do 360 tours. They can buy the hardware to do the 360 tours, all that sort of stuff. So if you imagine what it's like for anybody out there, if you're as an auctioneer, you can sit there, you've got an army of thousands of people in every single UK postcode. And trust me, some of the big, one or two of the auction companies, one in particular, turned around to us and said, okay, fine. You know, they were a bit skeptical. They didn't believe us when we started. And they said, well, I don't believe you can do that for us. We're going to test you. So they gave us one property about an hour north of Inverness in Scotland, one in the middle of Wales, and another one just inland from Truro in Cornwall. And it's not a problem. It wasn't a problem for us at all. We have people in all those areas. And these are not people who are employed full time. These are people who are going about their daily lives. The average age is 53. They're a little bit older. They're responsible people. They just like to keep their hand in at doing other things. And because there are lots of them around the area, they all get offered a job and they can take it or not take it. And it just happens to work very well. And it coincides with the values that a lot of the auctioneers have. They want simplicity, cheapness, obviously. So it has to be done at a cost-effective rate. But that's it. That's all they want. Access, and most of the auctioneers, some of the guys that own the auction rooms are a little bit older, but the people that run them are a little bit younger and understand how all the tech works. And they just want simple tech that works. That's it.
Yeah, and I also find it super useful. You guys kind of reacted very quickly to what's happening recently and introduced the floor plans and the virtual viewings and the 3D tools and everything else. It was just so easy to just book it. It's and previously I remember I had to call so many people and ask them, "Are you available to do this? How much would it be?" And they're and they will come up with all sorts of prices. A virtual tour can be anything from £150 to 1,500 for the same property in the same area. And basically it just depends. And sometimes people would say, "Well, I'm available in 3 weeks' time." I'm like, okay, that'll be after the auction. Thank you.
Well, the other thing that hasn't changed in the last, maybe 200 years is a bit strong, but certainly in the last 40 years is the amount of tech that's involved in putting a property on the market and selling it. And the amount of tech is probably 2% in terms of the process. It's 98% human, exactly as you just said there. It's people ringing up, "Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you meet? Where are the keys? What's this? What's that?" The system we've developed at Viewber over the last 4 years and the platform we have, which, by the way, is something that I think we're beginning to look at as a software as a service for auction houses and other companies to use, to be able to plug their own staff in at the front end and have all their supply services at the back end backed up by Viewber with our platform in the middle, being able to book. From that perspective, we've managed to develop a system which is about 70% tech and 30% human, because it just means you can go online and do all the stuff. It gets your instruction of the service you want, the delivery back of that service is all done by the platform. There's no ringing, there's no telephoning, it's all paid for on the platform. It just is. And at a time when a lot of people can't enhance their market share because the volume is difficult, competition is increasing, the best way for them to increase their profit margin is to take out cost. And of course, we all know that for a lot of people who own property, taking out cost can be very dangerous. If you're a landlord and you're trying to take out costs, one of the very few ways you can think about doing that is to get rid of your estate agent to increase the yield. But that means you've got to do it all yourself. Now, we've stepped into the breach for some people doing that. We can provide all of those services, the visiting services. You can book our viewers to do more or less anything to do with the property. But sometimes you really want an experienced agent, someone who knows what they're doing. What viewers are not is salespeople. They're really competent professional door openers. That's what they do mostly. So, they're not there to try and sell the property on someone's behalf. And most people, we did a survey recently, which you'd be interested. We did a survey of 250 people who just bought a property. And over 81% of those people said they'd rather be shown around by someone who wasn't the estate agent. They don't like being sold to. They just want to sit back and enjoy looking at the place without the feeling that they've got someone hovering around. Now, that's fairly obvious in the same way when you go into a shop. You don't like some shop assistant coming up and saying, "Oh, can I help you?" You want to go, no, just bugger off, please. I want to just look around and mind my own business. Okay. And it's the same sort of thing with estate agents. I realize there's a bit more to it than that, but
I think it's a wonderful point of leverage, though, isn't it? I mean, whether you're an auctioneer or an estate agent, being able to leverage that service means that they're able to offer more to both the seller, because obviously the more opportunities you're able to offer for people to view the property, the more likely it is that you're going to sell the property and maybe even get a premium if you get enough people in there. And at the same time, even for investors, that point of leverage is, instead of taking 2 hours there and 2 hours back on a journey to do stuff, they could be doing other work whilst they've leveraged out another human being to do the viewing. And like you say, they're competent. You can ask to be walked around, and you can go into a place and say, take a deep breath into the bathroom, tell me if it smells damp, or whatever the story is. You have that kind of interaction, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started in property when I was 15, I think the statute of limitations is changed. I'm probably outside the 15-year timescale, so I don't mind saying it publicly. But I did viewings for a local estate agent. I was using my cousin's driving license, but I think I think you could get away with it then. I think it would be really bloody difficult to do it now. But that's, apart from working with my cousin, he ran a couple of property businesses, development business, a couple of other bits, and I would basically just be in his office, filing and listening and stuff like that. My real first practical experience was on Saturdays, and this agent did half days on Sundays. I would be going and doing viewings, and like you say, I'd get a text message with all of the viewings that I'd be doing on Saturday by Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. And Sunday would be, second viewings from Saturday, or, the wife went to see it and now she wants to bring her husband to see it on a Sunday, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I would be fully booked for both days. And I'm not going to reveal the agent because I usually get cash in hand. It shows the sign of the times. But that's how I started. I started just by opening the doors, and I wasn't a salesperson. I was just opening the doors, double checking no one was getting anything, and then letting them leave again, just being nice, polite, smiley, just facilitating something that other people either necessarily didn't want to do because, like you say, estate agents, it sounds like an easy job, but the majority of the time, your Monday meeting starts at like 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And most agents finish at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening, or so, at least the ones that I know. So it's a big old bit. And then we started using Viewber, so we'd say to these guys, look, for the ones that you're doing, at least get the names and numbers of the people walking through the door. So then they would do that. Okay, well now ask them questions. What did they like? What didn't they like? Are they planning on registering to bid? Do they need any help? And I don't mind saying this, so I'm not going to name and shame. There was one individual specifically in the business who just couldn't grasp the idea of asking someone a question. He knew how to open a door. He knew how to drive from X to Y. I mean, God bless him, the amount of accidents he got because he's a pleb. But he would get there, he would open the door, and then he would close the door. And for him, that was a job good done. That was just it. And what I think Viewber has done is actually it's highlighted where people were so lacking in what it was that they were doing. Because people just kind of go, oh, this is a viewing, let's take them around, let's tell them, can you imagine yourself sitting in this kitchen with a glass of wine and a spag bowl on a Friday night? And whatever the story is, whatever the salesperson's trying to create the dream in someone's mind to be. And they would get lost in that. They would say, oh, it's got front and rear garden, it's got this nice panoramic view. But that actually like you say, it's a different level of skill from doing a viewing to actually getting someone across the line on a purchase. And sometimes if you're a viewer, if you're enabling a viewing at an agency, you have to have that really nice demeanor, that welcoming smile. You can't be that sharky hardcore salesperson, right? Because once you go in, you put people's backs up, they then start having a bad experience. So where do you put people at different points in the line? Because
there are two things that come out of that conversation. One, of course, is that the part of the benefit of what we do is that our viewers are local, so they live locally. So when they're going to open a door, they're going to know the local area, where the hospital is, where the cinema is, where the supermarkets are, what's the bus services like. Well, they know all that sort of stuff because they live there. And it's also one of those sort of things where in terms of pricing, it's like having a variable cost. You don't have to use it when you don't need to. So it's not like you're paying someone all the time. You just dip in and dip out when you need to. And you mentioned reports, and I'm not sure whether your comment there was based on the feedback that our people give. Of course, the other thing we do, which is highly unusual, and we're getting a lot from Hong Kong at the moment, with 236,000 people from there having applied for passports, is you can commission a report on a property. So if a property is coming up for auction or for sale, and you're living abroad or whatever, and you want to go and know what it's like, you can commission a viewer for 35 quid to go along and just take a little video, take some photographs. Is it what the agent says it is? Exactly what you said earlier. Does the kitchen smell? Whatever it is, and you get all that stuff straight back. So it's like having your own independent third-party report. Well, no one's ever been able to.
We use that a couple of times for a client. We've got an auction buyers club, which is a group of 12 people that basically look at properties daily in auctions, and one of our members is based in Birmingham, and he was looking at a property in Brighton. So basically what we did is he was like, oh, I don't have time to view it and stuff. I'm like, no problem, let's just get Viewber to it. And I think we paid for like the most comprehensive report you guys have for, I think, £75 plus VAT, which is ridiculously cheap for what it was. It would cost him more to drive basically to Brighton and go back. But for that £75, he got like the full report of the property, the whole video of the whole thing, description of each basically room and inside the property. And there was like 4 flats and 1 commercial over ground and basement, and it was quite a comprehensive report, and it made him kind of move on to the next step, which basically was, how do I finance it? How do I do? Basically, it gave him more peace of mind for very little kind of effort, because usually the biggest thing with people bidding in auction is that they lacking that kind of confidence, because they maybe didn't have the time to view at the time that the viewing was on. Maybe it was just too far. Maybe the kind of something was always not aligned, and that's the biggest thing in auctions. So for him, it was just like we made a few clicks basically, and it was all arranged.
Yeah, and I mean, the ability to check that what the auctioneer or the agent is actually saying is true. And I'm not saying that what they say isn't true, but we all know that a lot of people will leave they'll just put the minimum in. Yeah. And when it says quiet, you really do want to know, look, is there is it quiet? Can you go at a time when the neighbors might be being a bit noisy, or, is there a restaurant downstairs? Whatever it is, you can just ask those basic questions that anybody buying stuff will often want to know, and they can just get a third party view. So that's when I was interested to hear that your comment was from someone talking about reports. They may have been talking about feedback, but I suspect they were talking about these reports.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I mean the feedback is great anyway, but though that report was brilliant for just going on the system, clicking a couple of buttons, £75 plus that later, done, nice and simple.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that you thought that was ridiculously cheap, because we'll obviously now have to double those prices. So thanks for that.
You have to just increase with RPI and et cetera, in 2021 figures. Yeah. But no, it's I think one of the things that is brilliant about it is that it's so serviceable, right? That you have all those people locally who are able to go there, and you're able to leverage it, which means you're able to offer it at that kind of fair price, which makes it viable to all the people who are in need of that kind of service. And the thing I normally find with agents and auctioneers or off-market people, whoever it is, they're not providing a service, they're trying to retain control.
Which is fair enough.
Absolutely it is, but actually, you can sit there, you can go, you maintain control, but let someone else maybe handle the serviceability of it, right? And I think, what you have there is the great capacity to turn around and say, well, look, we have this service, but you can bolt on, or you can, like you say, you can dip in and dip out. You guys manage the control of the asset or the contracts and all this other stuff, and we'll just make sure people can get in and get out, and they're happy with what they see.
Well, that's true, and cost obviously comes down to it. I'm well aware that we've been talking for a bit now, so I don't want to outstay my welcome with you. But one of the things that we did as part of our research initially, and we update this quite regularly, is to find out how much we think it actually costs an agent to do a viewing. And I would have thought for the auctioneers it's probably more because of the distances involved. And actually, our research shows that the cost of getting a viewing done for a standard high street estate agent is about £32.60. So, and that's taking into account, car, office, cost of the employee, salary, everything, all the stuff that goes into running an employee. That's what it costs. And what tends to happen for us is when we, particularly with a lot of the high street agents, not so much with the auctioneers, because they can see the value in it straight away, because to them the whole thing is such a headache getting the viewings done, but certainly for the high street, they tend to turn around to me and they say, well, hang on a minute, we can get a 15-year-old Jay to go and do this for 10 quid an hour. Why would we pay you 25, 30 quid to go and get a viewing done or an open house? And but they don't understand the value of having no hassle, no management time with managing. I mean, at D&G, our weekend staff tended to be younger. They weren't terribly reliable. they left, that they cycled through quite a lot. There was a lot of churn. And to be honest with you, they were a pain in the arse to manage. So the idea that you can have, exactly as Piotr just said earlier, you just go on a platform and book it. You just go click, 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 and it's done. That has got to have a certain amount of value. And I think I can see, funny enough, I can see our platform moving forward to be useful for a lot of people. In other words, if you could white label a platform, you imagine your agency or your auction business running all the stuff they do through a Viewber platform, so that they don't ever have to pick up the telephone and deal with a supplier again. It's all just automatically instructed, and what you get back through the platform is automatically delivered with no human interaction at all. You can play suppliers off against each other, because the way the Viewber system works is, or the way it will continue to develop, is that, of course, for some of our Viewbers, they will ultimately be able to bid for jobs. So if you've got 2 or 3 suppliers for one of the things that you use on your platform, if someone in an office needs a service done, it goes out to the nearest 3 suppliers, and it's, automatically through the platform, and they're asked to bid on it. So you say, okay, fine, I'll do that report, but actually I'll do it for 65 quid. Well, you might find someone who's right next door or a closer supplier might do it for 55 quid. There's no bargaining or lots of telephone calls or time wasted. It's just all done straight away and delivered back. Yep, fine, go ahead, book, done. It's so easy. And I think that is the thing that's going to be changing. I love the fact, I'm really excited that you guys think Viewber's helpful to the business. That's fantastic. And to have Piotr on the call who actually uses it is fantastic.
And we got a comment from Guy Charlison from Network Auctions saying they're happy clients of Viewber, and the service works well, and it's fair priced. So don't let Ed put the price up. Now, I think what basically my point was from a perspective of a person who's about to spend 1.2 million on a property in Brighton, £75 is not a huge amount. From a perspective of auctioneers or agents who have got whatever £2,000, £3,000 commission, then it's a different comparison. So let's please keep the price at the same level.
Well, it is part of the reason that it's become so popular, but we'd love more of you listening to try it out. I mean, for a lot of people, it's always that first thing. How do we do it? Do we try? It's dead simple. Just go on, register, and off you go. I mean, literally, you could be having a Viewber, you could be using a Viewber this afternoon. There's no sort of
in any part of the country,
any postcode in the UK. Yeah.
Well, we're going to post a link to the site anyway, so that the people watching live will be able to see it. And there's a fair few people who watch it because it's kept on Piotr's page, so they go back and watch it at a later stage. So they'll have all of that there. But I think you obviously have an appointment fairly soon that you'll need to be getting to, so I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. It's been absolutely brilliant. We may ask you to come back. Some people do get. There is a little list of people who are requested to come back by popular demand, and I imagine when this is given a day or two for people to watch back, you'll be on that list, because you're on my list to have back, just to talk about the property market in the 70s and 80s. I love how property cycles work, so just hearing your knowledge of that London market would be phenomenal.
I'll finish with one taster for what used to be funny in the 90s, because there was a stage in the 90s where, of course, it's always been the case that the thing about central London is that it's always been one of those markets where people can put a large chunk of money fairly easily. And then if they have a problem in their own country, or they're not happy wherever they are, lots of people want to then come and live in London, so they can then come and live in their asset. But what we used to get when the euro was coming up was a lot of very panicked southern Mediterranean country nationals who clearly had been saving up money in a mattress or had acquired a large amount of cash, who used to arrive in the office of the business I was working for at the time, which was a very well-known agency, small boutique agency, but a very cool agency. And they would arrive with someone who they claimed was their daughter, and they'd literally have an enormous suitcase full of pesos or lira, literally a suitcase full of pesos or lira. There was no money laundering stuff in those days. And they would come into the office and put it down saying, I want to buy a flat. What have you got? And they would then go back to their country and leave their daughter in situ in the flat. And it was just hysterical. It was like it was like something out of the Wild West. And I mean, there are so many more stories like that. So, we should definitely talk more about that. It's great fun.
Definitely. Let's talk about stories of suitcases of cash and stuff. Sure, HMRC will be.
Well, we can't these days, Piotr, any more than Jay can talk about driving around age 15 with his mate's driving license. So,